that if your index, because you're only comparing two things.
Before unsigned, a new form candidate.
Yeah, but I would do it up here on initialize.
I have no idea how we change it to number one. I think it's maybe no, but everybody.
Input that length. That length makes it an unsigned length. Right, it's a length that's committed to rigid.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that you're comparing the whole thing is your index. But you just made it unsigned. I don't know. I'm trying.
Now, so I'm trying to think why I'm trying to do it. Yeah, man.
Alright, we're gonna get going. First thing to say is a lot of you saw that I graded a lot of stuff yesterday. So take a look on Canvas, look at your lab. Some people got zeros on things that I would be glad to give you all your points if you just look at why you got a 0 and then email me after you make changes. So take a look at that.
You get some of the points back.
Yeah, I'm being lenient right now because it shouldn't take me 8 labs to grade. So if you screwed up on lab 2 and you kept screwing up over and over and over again, then I probably should give you some feedback. Right. So most of the, if you did the lab and you turned it in and for whatever reason, it didn't compile because of warnings, or didn't compile because sometimes you're accidentally encoding it, you type up there when really you're supposed to be typing down in the terminal, that kind of stuff. So that kind of stuff, I'd be happy to give you points back for that. I'll be less lenient from here on out, but I'm being somewhat lenient right now.
What if you didn't write your name in order?
Well, I'll give you points back for all the ones but the first one. Well, your name started getting pretty cool. Like you did it, and then you wrote a really nice one, and then you forgot on the next one. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, I had a Latin influence now.
Right, I liked it. For the midterm, which is on when? Monday. Right, this is what I would say you should know. Classes, arrays, how to create and use string streams. For the code portion, which is the larger portion point-wise of the test, I would definitely know classes, and I would know string streams. Pretty much, right? I would know how to build a spaceship, okay? Because the spaceship had everything in it, right, that we need for a class. How to create it, how to write accessors and mutators, how to do a toString with string. That pretty much has everything in it that we're basically going to go over on the test, except for constructors, which I'm going to add in today. But overall, that's what you should know. I would write maybe class syntax, right, on your 3x5 note card. That might be nice. But I would use that as a study book. Questions about the midterm? No? How's everyone doing? Huh? I don't know. We were making the joke that I guess I graded stuff and then everyone. I don't know. Most people did good on their labs too, so I don't know.
You didn't do the assignments yet, right?
I haven't done the assignments yet, so you can.
I just grabbed it for comments or something.
Yeah, no, I haven't graded that one yet. I'll probably have that graded on Friday. Maybe tomorrow, although I got a bunch of meetings tomorrow. So that might not happen. All right, we're going to do stuff today, but let's talk about our class. So we wrote this class last class. I hate that that's how I have to say it. But, right. We talked about this class day of year, right? We wrote some member functions, right? We wrote some accessors, we wrote some mutators, right? And everything's really playing off of the attributes of my class, which are month and day, right? Once again, these are my underscore variables, right? This is the objects data, right? And then we have a bunch of parameters, which is temporary data for those particular functions. Alpha was really long, right? Because it had the big old long switch to change stuff, right? Input, this one doesn't have the error checking that we had, but basically what do? We take the parameters and we store it into the underscore variables, right? So input takes month and day. We also saw, right, if we do have checks, that instead of doing something like this, you could actually do something like set month, right, and pass in month. Right. If you're gonna write error checking, don't write error checking in two functions, right? Just write the error checking in one. All right. So this is basically just passing off the work of this to a different function. Accessors always return the thing that they're accessing. So the function month always returns month underscore. The function day always returns day underscore. The function foobar always returns what? Foobar underscore. Yeah, right. Look, I do have the error checking. So set month has error checking to make sure it's valid months. All right, and set day has error checking to make sure they're valid. It's not very robust. I don't check to make sure that the day is correct for the particular month that we already have. But that's what's going on. Questions on any of that? Are we sure?
Sir,
Sierra, yeah.
It just prints like C out?
Yeah, it prints like C out, but not behind the scenes, but like in the terminal, you can actually send error output to like a different place than regular output. So we've talked about STD out. There's also STD error. Right now, they're both linked to the console, but you can redirect it to a file or other place.
Like literally an error text, like log file.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Which is why we like to write errors to one output and output to another. Good question. All right, no other questions? This is important. We can't build on the other stuff we're going to do today without understanding classes.
How do you call a member function from main?
All right, so to call a member function from main or really anywhere, you do it on an object. So on line 38 in May, I create two objects, right? Today and bad. Objects is just a fancy name for a variable made from a class, right? Meaning that they have attributes and behaviors. So today and bad become two objects. They both have data associated with them, right? Month underscore and day underscore. Both objects have their own month and day, right? And then to call members, we just use the dot operator. So today dot, and then whatever member I have access to. For us, really the members that I'll ever have access to are functions, right? We talked about why last class with encapsulation that we should make our data private, right? That way the user can't mess with it, right? But all of our member functions are public. So the dot operator is important. You use the dot operator on objects, right? Remember, you don't use the dot operator when you're actually in the class. So here it's not something dot month, because your class is a blueprint. So you don't really know the names of any objects. So you don't really want to do it on a particular object. You want it to work for all objects of that type. So we just say month underscore, and that because output is part of day of year, right? That is day of years month underscore, right? And then the magic that happens is that when you use things like a dot operator, right, and call output, right, you do it on an object, and that's how you know whose month underscore and day underscore to use. Does that make sense? And in fact, it's kind of cool. We talked about this because you guys are smart, right? Behind the scenes, this actually becomes a day of year star this, right? Types. And so behind the scenes, when you call a object or you call a function on an object with a dot operator, it automatically passes in a pointer to the current object that you're doing. That all happens compiler-wise behind the scenes, which is why you don't have to add parameters for every single object that you're doing. Yeah. Right. Which is why, right, even though you don't have to, you can say this arrow month. Right. So it basically makes your syntax look a lot easier because it's really annoying to pass in the object to every function that you're writing. That would not be enough. Let's go back, because that actually won't work. But that's what's happening. Other questions? So we talked about encapsulation protects our data, right? We don't really want our object to ever have data that's not correct. And so we made it private. We added, right, accessors, mutators, input function that makes sure that all the data comes in through our function so we can do error checking. Are we good with that? The only time that my object currently is going to have data that's not correct is when? Anyone know? If I can use the set month, set day, I do that, right? I can't put bad data in there, right? It won't allow me because I have if checks to make sure. So when's the only time that I might have incorrect months and incorrect days?
On initialization?
On initialization, right? On creation, right? Because on creation, because I'm working with integers, garbage values, right? And so between creation and when I want to change things, right, I'm going to have incorrect data. All right, and so that's where the idea of a constructor comes in. Constructors construct our objects. They basically initialize our objects. So a constructor runs on object creation. And so in fact, on line 38, currently today and bad both call a constructor, okay, which constructs the object. It's not written, so the compiler writes it automatically for me. Isn't that nice? The compiler's going to write code for you, right? But it writes this default constructor which does nothing besides construct your object, so your data's still, right, garbage. And so we like to write our own constructors to make sure that the data or the values in my object are correct. So let's write a constructor. It should make sense that it should be public, right? It has to run and like do stuff, so it should be public. Do you remember constructors in C++? Anyone remember how we named them?
Nope.
Similar to the name, I think.
Yeah, right? So it actually is the name of the class. It's kind of interesting, right? It's a function named after the class, right? And this currently is that default constructor. Default because it has no parameters, so it's just going to do some base initialization for me, right? But I don't want that because I want to give it, right, a month and a day. And so I'm going to add in some, I do it in the right spot. I'm going to add in some parameters. Anyone ever do that and it doesn't compile? Right. We're so used to creating variables like this, but parameters each need their own type, right? It's not smart enough to know, oh, apply this int to that. Line 20 and 23 look very similar. Everyone agree?
Yes.
Yes, right? Well, one's named after the class and one's called input. Right? You also notice that constructors don't have a return type. There's no void, there's no int, there's no care. Right? It just is, this is the constructor. Okay? They look the same and they're basically going to do the exact same thing. The big difference is that input can run anytime. Use the dot operator on my object, run input whenever I want. Constructor runs when?
On creation?
On creation. So how many times does it run?
Once.
Once per object. Right? So always once per object. So I'm going to take this guy, you can go find my input function down here. All right, so there's input. All right, I'm going to put it right above input. All right. And now things get really redundant because you always have, bless you, have to have class name before function name, right? So, right? When you're implementing your constructor, it will always be class name, colon, colon, class name, because the constructor is named after the class. So day of year, colon, colon, day of year. Right? This is technically the function name. This is technically the class name. They just happen to be the same.
Interesting.
Right? And I have lots of choices to do here. I can say month underscore equals month. Right? Take the parameter, store it into the member, or into the member variable. Everyone good with that? That would work. What's the problem with that?
It's still garbage, right?
It's not garbage. The user touches it in a sense, right? There's no error checking between where it comes in and where it gets. Right? So I have error checking, right? So I could say set like month, right? Basically the exact same thing I did in input, set month. Right, am I good? I told you I'm pretty much writing the same thing. Right, set day. Or for those that are really lazy, you can just call input and pass in month and day. Right, because they do the same thing, right? So you can just say, nah, I don't want to do any of the work in the constructor because I already have another function that does all the same. I'd recommend not doing that, right? Not because I think you're lazy, but because every time you call a function, there's a little overhead, right? It takes extra time. And so, right, writing the 2 lines to to not have that extra is probably better. Speed-wise. Any of those things would work, although I'd recommend at least having the error chain. Questions on the constructor?
It's still initializing garbage, right? Or is it checking it in the when you
Right,
run it
so
through
when
set
I call
month?
set month, it's going to jump down to the set month function.
Oh, and then it'll just set it to 1 if it's invalid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're all kind of good there. I always forget to get us where we need to be. There we go. So let's see what happens when I G++ it. It was compiling. Is it going to compile now? Everything look good?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I probably haven't saved it. It shouldn't compile. That's why. I'm surprised. All right, I'm going to save it. Always an important thing. It's kind of nice. That's the one thing I like about CodeMV. It automatically saves it for you. See if we get our output back.
Oh, jeez.
All right, see a bunch of errors? All right, so let's see what it says. It says on line 40, it says no matching function for call day of year, : day of year, paren. Okay? Now, if you see any name, : the same name, you know it's going to be a what?
Constructor.
It's a constructor, right? Now, what it's saying is that it's looking for a constructor. Everyone see the open, close paren? So a constructor that has how many parameters? None. Okay? And it says here is the candidate day of year that takes what? 2 ints. Right? Proving that when you create an object, everyone see that? Day of year, today, bad. That looks like I'm just trying to create an object. When you create an object, a function is called. And what's called is a constructor. Once again, if you do not write one, what does the compiler do?
Makes one for you.
Makes one for you, a default one that has no parameters. Okay? But if you explicitly write one, which we did, we wrote one that has 2 parameters, it's not going to write the freebie for you, right? You don't get the freebie anymore. And so it's saying that it doesn't exist. Right? So it has this in the class. It is looking for one that takes nothing, and that's a problem. One thing I hate about C++ is I kind of wish that, right, when you created these objects, I kind of wish that they made you like put the parens on, right? To reinforce that when they get created, they do call a function. Okay, but when you don't write anything, right, you don't actually need parens on them. But now that we have a constructor that has something, right, so now I can say 10, 2. And bad could be 100, -3. Right. This says create an object called today, right? On creation, give values 10 and 2, right? Which basically says call the constructor, right? 10 becomes day, 10 becomes month, 2 becomes day, right? And then it'll run through the code in that function to get it working for me. Does that make sense? Questions there? Let's see if it works. Look, I was testing your last report. I do get invalid month, right? Some of my errors, right? But there's the month, right? I must have said it. I should probably look at what's happening. Right, now that I'm constructing, I don't have to do this, right? I don't have to say today.setMonth and today.setDay. Right, and I don't have to do this either.
Well, that's in the CF statements.
The CL statement should be fine, right? Because I'm just calling today.month and today.day, the accessors.
Okay.
So this will create it and initialize, and then I'll output the values. This will create and initialize with errors, and it'll output the values. All right, so I get the invalids, right, and today's month and day, and the bad one. All right, so this is on creation, which I feel like is kind of important because It's kind of annoying when you have to do like int x and then later on say x equals 5. Right? What do we like to do? We like to say int x what?
Equals 5.
Equals 5. And did you know you can also do this? Int x per int 5. Anyone ever write it like that? Anyone even remember that you could do that? Right? This is what we're used to. That's regular. Right? This is for the people that always write object-oriented and they just get in the habit of every time they create something, they use parens and passive values. Right? And so both of these syntaxes work. That's not technically calling a constructor. It's just made, right? It's faking it. It's made to look like it's a constructor. But integers don't have constructors. But you can use either of those. But this syntax, int x print 5, right? Notice it's the same kind of syntax that you use for objects. I don't like writing it like that, but you can. No, nothing wrong with it. It does look fancy, doesn't it? You're like, there's no equal sign in my whole code. How does it even work?
Plot twist, it doesn't.
I like it. Other questions? Right, so I talked about your freebie, right? The default constructor is a freebie constructor. It gets created automatically for you. But if you explicitly create a constructor, then you lose your freebie. But it could be that you do want to create a constructor that takes in nothing, right? Now that's allowed. I can have two constructors, both named the same. You remember what the name of that concept is?
Overloading.
Good, overloading, right? So I can create two constructors with the same name because I can overload them. And so this is one way to tackle the problem. Day of year, and then right down here, I actually have to write another constructor. Day of year, I can type, day of year, colon, day of year. Right, this one would be empty, right? So this would be the default. So now if the user decides to create an object and not give it any values, we as the creator of the class, the blueprint, get to decide what those values should be, right? And so we can do things like, we're gonna make things look cool today. So we're gonna say month underscore equals day underscore equals 0. I'm feeling lazy today, right? What is this doing? Assignment operations are what? Left to right or right to left? Right to left. So we start on this side. 0 goes into what?
Today.
Day. So day becomes
0.
and then day goes into
Month.
and day is
0.
some month is
0.
right. And I'm lazy and I did two things on one line. You guys can handle that or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can handle that. Yeah. Quick and dirty initialization, right? That's the whole point of this.
But the month can't be 0 and the day can't be 0, right?
Yeah, that's true. So should I make it 1, January 1?
Yeah.
That sounds better. So you see, most of the time when programming languages implement months and days, it's always 0. So January is always 0. Because computers like this start at 0, right? So
Computers are dumb.
because computers are dumb. That's right. I know, and we made them, right?
They start at nothing and become nothing.
Yeah. So that's one way of doing it. These are overloaded constructors. You'll see that happen a lot. But because you guys are cool, right, and we're talking about ways to do things easier today, right, let's talk about this instead. So instead of doing that, what if I said month equals 1 and day equals 1? What are these called? What kind of arguments? Default arguments. Good, right? So this says if a day is not provided, fall back to what?
1.
And if a month is not provided, fall back to 1. So I could create day of year without anything, agreed? And month would be
1.
and day would be
1.
Right? I can also pass in a month and day would be 1, right? And so this actually gives me, if you think about it, this gives me 3 constructors, right? One to construct an object with no values, one to construct an object with a month, and one to construct an object with a month and a day. And the default arguments handle the rest of everything that I want to do. So this is the easier way, I think, a lot of times if you're not worried about, right? If I'm okay with them just giving me a month, then this should work fine. Because now it's going to set month, set day. If they don't provide me a month will default to what? 1. And so my object's value will be 1, and day will default to 1. So now, right, I can create today like this, right? This says create me an object, look for a constructor that takes no arguments, right? It has no parameters, right? And I have a constructor that says I have default arguments, so you don't have to give me it. All right, so today should be, right? Today should be 1/1, right? January 1. If I just pass in a 5, will that work?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because what?
Reassigns one of the.
Right? Month will become 5. Day will fall back to the default, which was 1. So let's see if that works. Right? Today's month, today's day is 1. Bad date, it's actually not a bad date, but right, I did 5, so let's say 8. So I actually created 3 constructors with 1 constructor by using what? Default arguments. Okay, that may come in handy for you as the semester continues. Trying to decide if I want to introduce. We'll save that for another time. There's in constructors, there's also this thing called an initialization section where you use a colon and initialize stuff. That really doesn't matter until we get into inheritance. So I'll just introduce it there, because by the time I introduce inheritance in the second to last class of the year, you'll totally forget anything that I just said. Right? So we won't even worry about it. Maybe it'll be like, I'll probably in my lecture be like, hey, remember when I said there was this thing that we were supposed to do and I didn't do it? Well, now we're going to do it. So you can look forward to that when you get there.
I'll mark it in my calendar.
Yeah, mark it, right? Little reminder. Questions on constructors? Right? They're really important, right? To make sure your object at creation time has the data that it's supposed to have. Good? All right, let's talk about our last concept for today, which is this idea of separate compilation. Actually, I want to talk about this real quick.
What was the benefit of overloading?
As opposed to the default arguments. When I did the default arguments, it also allowed, let's say I had 5 data points, right? Got 5 member names, underscore variables.
Yeah.
Then if I defaulted all of them, then there would be ways to get 3 things, and maybe you don't want to get 3 things and not 2 other things. So if I overload and you're like, okay, I want to have a constructor that takes 5 things, I have a constructor that takes no things, maybe I have a constructor that takes an array that will do all 5 things, right? It gives you a little bit more control. Okay, I said this, right? You can have a constructor with no parameters. It's a default constructor, right? We talked about that, right? We did this, right? It's weird when you call the default constructor. Normally when you call functions, you need parens, right? We've been saying that, right? What's a function? Oh, it has parens, it has parens, it has parens. Not for constructors, right? You can if you're passing in multiple arguments, but with none, right? It's weird, no parens, right? We talked about this. I'm just making sure I did this. Okay. If you have a constructor that has 2 values, right, you need to call it with 2. We kind of went over that, right? You can't call it with nothing. You actually get an error, right? Unless you've added in a default constructor. Good? Okay, let's talk about separate compilation. And separate compilation is the idea that as our programs and as our code gets larger, right? Let's go back to this, right? You're kind of tired of me scrolling, right? This class, which is really basic, right? This class is really basic. There's already 158 lines of code. Everyone good with that concept? And so separate compilation is the idea of putting pieces in different files, and each of those pieces has a distinct job, and they're each a distinct part of my program. So when we talk about my day of year, really any program I'm writing with a class, right? There's really 3 things that we have. We have the class declaration, which goes where? Above main, right? We have the class definition, which goes below main, and then we have main, okay? Now, I talked about this last class a little bit, but the weird thing is that right now we're writing the class and we're also writing main, right? But those are really two distinct things, right? Writing the class is the blueprint. Main is an implementation of the class. Everyone agree? Right? And so if I was going to write a class and I wanted to have it be useful for other people, right? I wouldn't write main for them, right? They're going to write their own main, okay? We've been using streams all semester, agreed? They're a class, right? But all I get is the class. I mean, all I do is implement the class. The class has been created behind the scenes for me, right? The blueprint has been created behind the scenes. I don't have to go find strings main and like change it, right? I write my own main, right? And I implement the class string. So in the same way, when we write our classes, we want to write, right, the blueprint in their own files and then main in its own file, because the main can change, right? This happened in assignment 1. It wasn't class-based, but in assignment 1, you had assignment 1H, assignment 1 CPP, and then you had main. And in fact, you had a main, and I had a main, right? I gave you a driver main for you to test your stuff, and then I gave you a unit test main that allowed me to test it. Does that make sense? You can't have two mains in one program, agreed? But you can use the same H and CPP files in your own main. So that's why your main worked when you compiled it with your main. That's why my main worked when you compiled it with my main. Does that make sense a little bit? And so it's pretty easy, those three pieces. The above main goes into an H file, it's called a header file. The below main goes into a CPP file, that's an implementation file. And then main stays main. You'll hear it called main, you'll hear it called driver. Right? A lot of times those are the names that you'll hear. And so we want to separate it, that way our class becomes portable. So I'm going to take what we've done here, right, and I'm going to start separating. So I need to create a new file, right? My class is called day of year, and so normally you name them the same as the class name, although you do underscores for your stuff. So day of year.h. Right. I'm also create another file called day of year.cpp. Right. And then in main, I'm going to take my class. Right. This is my above main. If I could scroll better. I'm going to do it with the keyboard. That's easy. Right. I'm going to take my class and I'm going to put it in the H file. Right? This is my above main. Now, the other thing I want to put in here are any of the libraries that I would use with this class. So if this class uses cout, then I'm going to include what?
Cout.
Good, right? So I'll include IOStream. I can type IOStream using std cout. I think I also used Sierra and Ango. We do this because we don't want the user to have to include stuff that they don't even know what I use in my class, right? String might use a lot of different libraries, but we don't have to include them. We just include string, right? And it includes all my libraries. So we use the includes and then our class. There's one other thing that can happen, and that's the fact that your H file can get included from multiple places. You remember when we talked about the preprocessor? Right? The compiler, but before that we have a preprocessor. It takes all the pound whatever things and actually copies and pastes the code there. And so what can happen with H files, because they get included in multiple places, they'll get copy and pasted more than one time, but you can't have two, right, day of year classes, right? But for you, the programmer, you don't see that, right? That's happening behind the scenes. So we need to protect our H files, and we do that with something called header guards. So we say pound if and def, and then we define something, right? Normally, I like to just do last name and then class name, day of year. Day if year? What's an if year?
When you're not sure of the year.
Right, yeah, it's an if year. Define. That's run. Day if year. So the right side of the thing in brown on the screen, that should always be the same, right? Once again, anything with a pound sign is for the preprocessor. And so you're telling the preprocessor, if I haven't defined this thing, then define it. And then also define all this code. And so because we have an if at the top, at the very bottom, we need an end if. Right? We're not writing C++ code, right? We're writing what? C++ preprocessor. Right? But this basically says that when the preprocessor goes and it starts copying and pasting all of your code into one file, it says if you haven't defined that, define it and copy this stuff. But the next time it finds this file, it's been defined, right? And then it doesn't copy it. So it just protects it from not compiling behind this. Those are called header guards. Right? You should have them in all of your H files. So my header guards go there, right? Then if I take my below main, right? I'm going to take all that. I'm going to put that in my CPP file. What you got?
For the H file, like the define and the if and then,
Yeah.
do you need all that capitalized, or can you?
I mean, they just have to match. My style would be that it's capitalized. And they need to be unique. So that's why I just slapped my name on it.
All right.
So I took all the code below me and I put it in its own file. Now, this is the implementation, so it needs to know about the H file. So I'm going to include it. Day of year.h. When you include files in the same directory, you use double quotes. Normally our includes are in angry jaws, right? Because they're libraries that are already made. Like the angry jaws. Okay. I also have angry quotes too when they go sideways, but we don't get them. We get straight. So this basically says what? It's telling the compiler to take all of this code, copy it, and paste it right there. Does that make sense? But what it does is it separates our interface, right, from our implementation. That's a word I just threw out, interface, right? If you think about it, as a user, to use a class, you need to know what? The name of the class, and you need to know about the name of all the member functions, right? That's really all you need in order to use someone else's class, right? What is its name? What are its member functions? Because once I know the name of a member function and its parameters, right, I can use it. So this is really the interface. This is what the outside user is going to use, okay? The implementation, they don't need to know that. They don't need to know how many variables you created and what the names of your variables are. So put that in its own file, right? Separate the two. And then the last thing that we're going to do in main, right? Now that I got rid of everything, right? Really, I just need to include what? Right? Bring in the header file. Good, right? So day of year.h. Now, in this program, everyone see that I use cout?
Yes.
So I should also include IOStream. And I should also have a using std cout and using std end out. You should always include what you use in your particular file. But I don't use CAir in here, so I didn't include it.
Did you include the CPP?
Good question. I was literally just going to talk about that. So it always comes up, what about the CPP, right? Because if I can compile main, main's going to include the H, right? But H doesn't include the CPP, right? And hear me, never include CPP files. H's have header guards, you include them. So the question is, how does, right, my implementation, right, basically the meat of my program, right, how does that get into my program? Anyone know the answer? let's see what happens when we compile. So if I say G++ main.cpp, I think I saved everything.
Oh,
Right? I get errors, and the errors hopefully make sense. Undefined reference to day of year, right? Undefined reference to day of year, month, day, right? Because I included the H, so it knows day of year exists, right? It knows it's a class type, it knows it has these functions, but there's no implementation. This is basically saying, okay, great, you told me this function exists, but you never wrote the function. Does that make sense? But I did write the function, right? And that's because at compile time, you always compile all of your CPP files. So my G++ main.cpp and also day of year.cpp. Right? Now it compiles without undefined references. You bring in CPP files with the compiler, you bring in H files with an include. Okay? You bring in CPP files with the compiler, H files with the include. So now I should be able to run my program, right? And today's month, today's day, and that's it. One other cool thing you do, so if I try to G++ day of year.cpp, right? You get this lovely error. And the big thing you want to pick out is the second line from the bottom. It says what? Undefined reference to main, right? Because my implementation file doesn't have a main. Agreed? Right? So it can't make the full program. When you just compile something, it tries to bring everything in, all the linker stuff in, right, to make it all work. But, right, sometimes you don't want to deal with the unit test or anything like that. You just want to compile your code, right? Like G++ -C, right, which compiles it to object code, day of year.cpp, right? That will run the compilation. Did I get any errors? No. So my class, right, CPP and H file compile fine together, right? No errors. Now, if I compile with main and I have errors, then I probably didn't write my my header file correctly as far as what are the names of my functions, right? What are they doing? But it's actually made a object file, right? Everyone see that day of year.o, right? That's basically like there's a string.o living out somewhere, right? It's already been compiled, right? But you know, right? When you include stuff, it'll bring it into your program. So now you can actually compile with G++ main.cpp and also day of year.o. Right. And that just prevents us from having to recompile day of year again, right? This has already been compiled, right? Now it's compiled main and then link this file, right, into our bigger. But the big things to remember are the H file is above main, and it has header guards. The implementation file, CPP file is below main, and you include the H file. And then in main itself, you also include the H file. And when you compile it, you compile only all of the what? CPP files, right? Only all the CPP. Which my main files will do that automatically for you, right? First time I wanted did that automatically for you, right? You just didn't realize that. Questions? Yes.
So what if you have a lot of classes? You have to
more files.
It's tedious. You have to include a lot of CPP.
Which is why we write make files. The question was if there's a bunch of classes, it gets tedious. It does. That's why we have make files, because they help us out. And also, if you think about it, if you have a bunch of classes, if you have 20 classes, I don't want to recompile all 20 of them over and over again. It actually starts taking time when they get bigger. So if we compile each individual into O files, then it'll only recompile the things that change, which makes our development life a lot. There are C++ programs that take 10, 20, 30 minutes to compile.
Oh.
Right? Which is a long time. But I mean, we're talking about huge programs.
Yeah, those computers run pretty fast too.
Other questions?
Can you show the header guard on the?
Yeah. I can. So the big thing for the header guard, if and def, right, pound define, and then just a name that's the same. And then some people forget that there is just an indif in the month. So make sure the indif goes all the way to the month.
Will it throw an error without it?
Yeah, I think because it might say unterminated or something like that. Let's see. Unterminated diff indif, which means that you didn't terminate it. So yeah. Terminate it, and then you're good. Do remember, I realize that some people don't realize this, but if we go into our repos and we look at, where are we, PA2FA19, right? We always go to labs and assignments, but there is a folder called class examples, right? So I go in there and I go into today's lecture 10, right? It has all the examples that we did today. So if I forget, right, basically I'm trying to say if I forget how to do header guards, right, I can open that up, right, and look at it, and you'll see here's a dummy class that has, right, how to do header guards on top and on bottom. Great, good question, Ryan. Any other questions? We good? We actually ended the lecture on time, maybe even a minute early, which is good because today's lab's is a little long. But you guys are rock stars, right? So that's when you're supposed to say yes, we are, right? You gotta own that.
Yes.
So let's look at lab 10. Ooh, lab 10 has both temperature CPP and this one here.
Yeah, there's probably nothing coming to play though.
Oh, it opened up here.
We're just writing the class, right?
Yeah, did I write the H for you? I don't remember what I did. Look, I did. I wrote the H in. Hey, when things say fill in, what are you supposed to do?
Fill it in.
Fill it in. Go figure. Look at what Ryan was asking about, right? Add the header guard. So the H file, all you have to do is write your name and also add in the header guard. I wrote the implementation, or sorry, the interface. So I told you that there's a class called temperature. Here's one constructor. Here's another constructor. Right? Here's another constructor. Right? Here's some other stuff. These comments are really important. They tell you what to do, so I would read those. But basically, the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to take everything down to here, right? Go all the way up to here. Don't take that, right? Up to here, and bring them over to your CPP. Oh, I wrote there. Oh no, where's the flashing? To this CPP. Right? And so this is where I would paste it in, and then start, right, changing the semicolon, the curlies, and, right, temperature, colon, right? I didn't talk about this too much, but these comments for your function should stay in the H file. And so the nice thing is in the CPP file, you don't actually need really any comments unless your function gets long. If your function's 10, 12, 15 lines of code, those header comments should be enough to understand what's going on. Okay? So what I do, and hopefully someone can help me, because I know you can do this in CodeIndy as well, but you can put you can do dual panes. And so you can have your H file, right, on one side with, okay, what is it supposed to do? And then over here in your CPP file, you can actually start writing, right, what it's supposed to do. Right. So constructor number one, right, I'd be like, okay, I'm writing constructor number one. What am I supposed to do? Oh, it sets Kelvin to 0. Well, we know that I shouldn't say Kelvin equals 0, right, because all of my member variables always have what at the end? So it should be Kelvin underscore, right? In your class, there is only one data point that you are storing things into, and that's Kelvin, right? So this class stores temperature and also can convert temperature to Celsius and Fahrenheit, but things are always stored in Kelvin. So if data comes in and it's not in Kelvin, you need to convert to Kelvin. If data comes out and someone wants it in Fahrenheit, you have to convert from Kelvin to what? To Fahrenheit. Okay, so that's kind of how that is set up. Each of the functions are pretty short. All right, so that's good. I don't know if this makes you feel better or worse, but in my algorithm 1 class, this is like a 3-week assignment,
Oh.
and I'm giving you an hour and a half to do it.
Oh.
But that's because you guys were on.
Special now.
I make them write the H file though too, so I've already done that, right? How to set it up, but you just have to copy and paste and read, which I think you guys can do, right? We'll find out.
That sounds like a lot of work. I mean,
I don't know if I copied.
Control C is a lot of work.
I have Control C, Control V. It's even more work when you like use the mouse, right click, copy, right? Keyboards make you so much faster in computer land.
You're blowing my mind right now. I'm using keyboard.
I haven't done this in a while, but I'm gonna pass around a sign-in sheet, so make sure you sign that before you go. Make sure you do your lab before you go. For those that showed up late, check your grade on Canvas, because you might have zeros for things that maybe you shouldn't have zeros for. So you should read the comments. You can come talk to me. You can shoot me an email. Any of that kind of stuff. Is that a question?
Just kind of your help.
Okay. Let me get the sign sheet.
Yeah.
Are we ever gonna make like
Something real?
like an actual program screen?
No. Okay. It's not worth it.
Is it that bad?
It's just like to teach like GUI stuff. It's different on C++ than other programming languages. So to take the time to teach you that, and then like for you to like do a different programming language, it's like. So we're teaching, but lower than that, right? Lower level.
Yes, you did.
So now you're back to this.
Wondering if
It's saving. Computer died while studying for the physics test.
Oh yeah, that's right. You forget that.
As long as that's checked.
No, actually, I had it for the lab.
Zero means lower graded.
Yeah, that's what I was,
It's not gummy, right? It has so it worked.
I'm trying to figure out this warning on lab 3, so I can really get credit for it. But, it says comparison of on-time expression with this, and I changed it, but it's just greater than equal to 0 always true, so I took out the equal sign, and I made it, so it's still, it should say
Okay, so let's talk about unsigned integers.
yeah,
Hold what values?
integers.
But what range of values? What's the smallest value that they got?
I think isn't like integers go for like
Right, but that's not an integer, it's an unsigned integer. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to.
so it's 0 to.
Right, exactly. So when you write an unsigned integer greater than or equal to 0, well, unsigned integers are always what?
0, greater than.
Or equal to 0. Right, so that's why I'm saying it's always true, because it's always true. So you don't have to worry about the 0, because the number that comes in will always be 0 or more.
So should I just take my card out?
It will be bigger than 0. No, because of that.
I just added the unsigned, change it back.
Oh, you should put down here. Send me back.
Yeah, something's wrong, email me, resubmit an email me.
Just get all last number.
I did
Because it does, it's doing ASCII ordering, so all the ones come before them.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. We just said that.
Oh. Oh, oh.
Right, right. Yeah, so, right, so this is the header file. This tells you what it all is. And so, so like the H file on one side, and then I'll look at my CSCI file on this side. And so here's a class called temperature. Here's your first one. So I just copy that over and paste it here. Right, and really I like to copy them all over. Right, because remember, we'll take on the temperature function, which is a number. There's a lot of those.
Not have to.
Nope, nope. This includes the temperature that actually goes into all about this. The only thing that we implement are the functions. So we just take that. We also don't take like the private or the double Kelvin or any of that. We just take the function.
But I have to do second column, 0, but
Right.
under there, under here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So like I would take the semicolon with the curly. Right, I would put the last name. For that. Right. And I would just stub the functions and stub the functions instead of writing what's in them, because there's so many, just get them all there and then compile them. You're gonna fail the test, but it should compile. But because if you think about it, this is like setting up the structure of the code. But then once you start writing in here, you're also writing like the logic of the code. So set up the structure of the code and just compile it to make sure that it is type temperature one time or something like that. And then once it compiles, then come back and be like, okay, what am I supposed to do in this function, right? Oh, so you read it, okay, what am I supposed to do? What do I do in the next function, right? Read it. That makes sense.
Yeah, kind of, is this supposed to go under
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
then put constructor 2 in there?
No, so this is its own function, right? So that would just come in here. That would go there. This is the next function. Right, so on and so forth. Quite a few of them. And then, right, for each of those, right, you do this one, which are colon, report function. Yeah, and you don't need the comments can stay. Yeah. So the comments stay in the H file. That's why I put you in two panes. Leave the comments in it, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, in the H file. You need new stuff?
It's not always, there's one too, missing. It's not any of this as well. It's not always the line.
Make sure you have access.
I know you probably said the first one, copy and paste them all, so you're gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
Theoretically, the parentheses work just like it would outside of C++.
Yeah, although like it won't put parentheses on and multiply them.
Right, so you take parentheses with something inside those, apply them.
Yeah. Yeah, right, you can't do,
Can't just copy paste.
you can't do 5x plus 2, right? You have to do 5 times x plus 2. Because this works in math. We'll do the inside parentheses and then we'll multiply by 5. There's no implicit multiplication yet. But it will still do this first, even though normally it's right this would come first. So that all works.
If that defines, they can just be anything, right?
Yeah, the thing that you do after it.
You're just saying if this doesn't exist, copy it, if it does exist.
That's basically like creating variables for the food process. Which is weird, but that's what it is. Yeah. Well, no, this is about the underscore. There is no total without the underscore again. Yeah, kind of all for equals. I do, but not till
signature for that. Anyone else sign in? Yeah, over there. It's always you. So I was made sense in front of class.
The subtraction, you know, that's still left to right?
Yeah.
Subtraction right from left.
Thank you. I have to just enter it in right now, so I don't lose this sheet.
That's our monthly sign,
Yeah, monthly sign. That's why I did it today, but really, like, you're taking a test next week, so I'll really know who's here. It's not.
So am I converting it here? Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, this constructor is going to do the exact same thing that some of these are going to do. Yeah, but so you can write it with an if statement, but then you can call like second from Celsius or second from Fahrenheit to do the actual conversion. That way you don't have to rewrite the formula more than once.
Gotcha.
That's not cycle, is it?
No, so basic.
So I gotta basically do this part.
So when you see C, just say get temp from Celsius current. Don't rewrite the formula, call the function that does the conversion. That way you don't get typos and you know what I mean?
It's at that Celsius.
Yeah. Each formula should only show up one time in your class.
Okay.
You just call the function that has the formula.
Including the other functions.
Because if you make a typo, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, is it in my constructor? Is it in this one? Like, where's the typo? How many places do I have to fix it?
Oh.
No. Yeah. This semester. Did it over time. Wow. Yeah, you got it. Is it not in that? Yeah. But this is, oh, but I gave you all this stuff. Yeah. Because some semesters like, I have lost time. If I'm really short this time, some semesters it's not too long. I think you might like some bigger. Yeah. To be right. Yeah, because they can take that priority, so you can simply say priority is not 1 through 5. Instead of the 5. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and you won't use it in page 2. You use it in UI. So you should do UI. But in the UI, basically, you would make that difference in UI. So at the top, you would include capacity to the right. And then down here, in the private section, you don't use it on that. But you don't need it public because you'll in the UI you'll just use it. So all your UI functions you'll just say leave it out. Leave it out. Oh no. Well, I'll give you some of it. Yeah, you'll be testing it yourself. I'll test it yourself. But, yeah, I give you some of the less complicated. It's up more like a spaceship. Can you have the whole colon? Is that you?
Yeah. Well, it's a function here. One, the parameters are string, and all color. Return the length of the string on.
I mean, just like the copy paste, right?
Count the no, it's the thing that counts the uppercase and lowercase characters in the string.
Testing.
So
It's not like
basically,
when you do like the value belonging to upper.
sort of, basically, so like for, so I created 2 decks. This is basically the placeholders for how many uppers and how many lowers. And then basically, I has to be smaller than record size. So if it is alpha, if it's a letter,
That is true. I think there is such.
let's run both of these. And then basically we're doing like comparing that index alpha to its upper version of itself, right? And if that's true, I increment value 1 by 1. So that means it found an upper letter. And so basically, if it's comparing this and it's different, then it's not an upper case.
Alright,
You see what I'm saying? And then I did the exact same
We don't have
thing,
to do
but for
anything with
lower.
Grand King.
To lower.
That's like,
And to
American
himself,
for
if
Kelvin.
it is true,
Oh, really?
it's already lowercase, then
No.
too.
I think,
We're not doing it as
I'm
weird.
trying to remember why it's not because you want only 4 code instead of 4 listed.
Well,
I put this aside, so I won't remember.
well, one of the other big things that he was introducing was the, call by reference.
Yeah,
Basically, because you're only returning the reference from size, right?
yeah,
But since these are passing by reference, when you change these, they're also changing globally. They're changing anywhere else.
alright,
That was kind of the weird tricky part.
thank you.
I'll leave it open.
So this is basically saying that the file is in Windows format as opposed to Unix format, meaning it has, when you hit enter on Windows, you get a new line character, but you also get a character. On Linux, Unix, Mac OS, you just get a new line character. So it's basically a wasted character. I haven't figured out, this happened to everybody, I haven't figured out why. So I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but we can figure it out. Utility that way. You can do it in a lot of text editors too, but not. Right, yeah. Copy that. Right, exactly. Oh, 6 minutes away. Yeah. That actually. That's not hard. Oh,
Well, their header's blue.
No, that's that.
Weird.
Come back over.
What's that?
header text is blue.
Right. You're the one that works.
So,
You know what I mean? That's why on this side.
Is it basically seconds, see if there's uppercase, and at each location, and wherever there's it's character implements, and
So far, all you're doing is you're checking to see if it's a letter.
Yeah.
So as you right now, you do need that. But so right now, all it's gonna do, it's only gonna, right now it's gonna increment 1 every time it finds a letter. So you need more to it. Well, so you need to, not only need to check to see if it's a letter, you also need to see if it's up. So you're gonna need 2 more if statements. This if statement needs to be true for the other 2 to run. So that's your, this is basically your error check.
And I just see if is alpha, that's at I.
Correct. There's no end to that. Right now, you're only checking to see if it's alpha. You know what I mean? Meaning, not right there now. You'll need it on your next one. So the next thing you need to write 2 more if statements that only run if this is true. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so.
So this next if statement's gonna be like if,
So all these functions are all.
both of them are gonna go with their own.
They're all really short.
This is up.
Except for
No, I would go if stats dot stat is equivalent to.
I'm not checking, there's no checks for.
2 upper stat. 2 upper dot, parentheses, I think. Stats dot. More fun, you just. Yeah, you need an extra one here. It's like this. Yeah, you need more fun. And then now when that is
So,
true.
on the last one, the Q string. Which I can.
But see, what's not closing is this one. There you go, there you go.
Anyway, so am I just talking about anything that is?
Oh, you missed.
Well, you just won't know, so you have to write next thing. You have to check the unit. If the unit is K, then do this. If the
And
unit
that's where your increment
is C, do that.
and then here.
Oh,
So you'll write, if the unit's
this
K,
is
then
more
you're
of pulling everything.
Yeah,
up here, right?
exactly. And you'll call all those functions.
You don't want it to return. You want to keep going, so you're saying second.
Well, no, but it gets
The first
Celsius.
Focus.
So here's your, yes.
This one. What do we do if we don't have Celsius equal?
Well, you don't have Celsius, you only have things, you only have Kelvin underscore. So the formula here says if you want it in Celsius, you take Kelvin and you subtract.
So do I have to make a Celsius?
Just return, just like this, just say return Kelvin underscore minus. Don't complicate it.
Okay.
How does that sound? It's done.
Yeah, but.
Like magic. Yeah.
Do that?
Yeah. Yeah, although this one is a 2-string, so do it on string, not on CL.
Can't you just do that? No, then we just.
Yeah, you can do that, but you're CL.
Oh, right. I got it.
But yes, everything that you did right, just create a string.
I had one
CL.
initially, and then I was like, why do I even need that? I forgot to return the string.
Change your CL to SL or something like
I
that.
literally just changed them to see how they were.
These are functions really types.
Yes.
Yeah, this one.
This is function definition.
Yep.
So, in here,
If one's true, the opposite is false.
in here, this,
No, it's not.
will tell you what this comment wants to do. So inside of here, I define the algorithm to calculate temperature based off of, if I'm given air kind of stuff.
That's an end.
And for a Swiss,
That's not something, yeah.
fine.
And then depending, if I get C, obviously something.
And the other thing about this, so you look at your age, so you will have set temps from Kelvin, set temps from Celsius, you can call those.
Is this supposed to be?
You know, you haven't written them yet, still set up your logic where you call it.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Click this one.
But knowing the interface, you can actually
Right, I
write
think I
your
did
constructor,
that.
knowing that eventually you'll write those functions to do it. Yeah, they just won't compile until you write it, but you can like set it.
I don't understand what that would mean.
So this happens a lot, like if you and I are working on a program together, right, we're gonna set up what the interface looks like, right? But then it'll be like, okay, you write this big function, and I'll write this big function. And I'll call your function even though you haven't written it yet, because I know what it's supposed to do, because there's comments on what it's supposed to do. That happens a lot.
Yeah, but like, this function, that would like use me, so I just won't come try this. That's the first part of it.
What's that?
Okay, I just was looking at it. Trying to see how it is.
Your second parameter is a bool.
Fields are in there.
But, I know you do have to, it's, the bool's being passed in. So that's gonna be for, your making it better.
Yeah.
Or, basically, it's only gonna, you want that part of the code to only work if it passes in a true. See what I'm saying? So the code will normally get, I can't remember what it's supposed to mean, you have to look at that portion first, what he wants you to do with it. But basically, that boolean is gonna tell you whether or not he wants that portion of that code to work. So basically, like, if boolean is true, this part of the portion of the code works. See what I'm saying? Otherwise, it skips it.
Temp is basically just right, temp is the temperature. So if Kelvin is 10, and I want to make Kelvin, it would be 10 space Kelvin. If I want to make Celsius, it'll be 25 space Celsius.
Oh.
It'll just look like that. You can, I mean, it's not always going to like delve into the unit test, but you can see that here's the two strings. So when I say two string F, temperature, space, and then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know it. Well,
You're not gonna change it, right? Kelvin's still gonna be Kelvin, you're not gonna change that Kelvin, because here you're just getting it, which is why it's constant, you actually change it. And you're trying to go with it.
and then if I say, like, do 40, okay,
Right.
do I have to say last name?
Yeah,
D or SS out, I guess.
yeah.
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 That's
It's a long if statement, right? If it's K, SS, unit,
Long.
Kelvin, whatever.
okay.
That make sense?
Yeah.
But you don't have to, if that's Fahrenheit, you don't have to like write the formula again, just call the function that does the formula. Right? Anytime now you call get temp as Fahrenheit, it'll take Kelvin, right, and it'll convert it to whatever you want to.
Okay.
Otherwise you have to, we don't want to rewrite the formula over and over again.
Okay.
That's an underscore. maybe compile it right now and see if it works.
Well, this should be temperature, I think all of them should be temperature. Put that on all of them, see what happens. Because you can't have an initialization section if it's not part of a class. I would not do it on this one because here it's going to be overridden again. So I would just say priority equals 5. Yeah, that's right. Because otherwise, if you set the underscore 1, but then on the next line you reset an underscore 1 and then did I get all the work for the check and then said, actually, let's just ignore it and override it. Okay.
Oh, well, but this is.
Line 10. Constructors that things they don't have return.
Oh, okay, are all these.
Just the ones that, I mean, if they're void or if they're, we always take the non-underscore and store it international. So don't pick up backwards. This is your class objects data. That's what we always want to store in there because assignment's always right to left. It's always the thing on the right that's coming in. Stored to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then, yeah, we will eventually.
Yeah.
But it'd be good for us to do it. The class home is going to return home.
Hey, I don't remember 100%. Is the or sign 2 vertical line?
Yeah, right. Always good. You're awesome.
It's the same as, from what I was reading, if the text, if the Boolean is true, you see our message and.
That's the same thing.
Yeah. And then if it's not, then it's simply one thing.
That's what you're trying to do.
Also, I don't know if two of them will work on this. It all works on the fifth.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna work on this. In which case, if it doesn't work on, yeah, and I think you're done if it works on strings, but I'm not pretty sure it doesn't. So if it works on characters, that means you need to do a for statement or increment through the string and do over each character individually.
Because everything's getting stored in the Kelvin, so you're gonna set it.
That might work.
Kelvin's coming in.
That'd be awesome.
You have no temporary.
Store everything.
Okay.
That's the only variable that has.
That's your class, right? That's your class object variable.
Does two of them work on strings or is it only like characters?
You
Okay.
have to write a function, a loop for each character and do it.
So, well, you said make will automatically compile all your.
If you write it correctly. But I wrote it, so you're gonna say that.
Oh,
You know what I mean? It's not, I just wanna say, just because it's make doesn't mean that it's gonna work correctly. It's gonna work correctly because in make, I've added all this. Does that make sense? What?
Oh.
plug in your
Oh.
Did you write some of your messages?
No. They're all compiler error. That's neat. Why do they sound snarky?
Pilot's getting sassy with you.
That's right. Did you forget the semicolon again? Literally.
So, basically from what I understand, people are using false, but in but you also want to if the boolean is true, so like this. But I tried to run that and not liking the default setting.
Well, default arguments only exist in the above, so you need to get rid of the equals. Makes sense. We broke the false standard.
I'm assuming that by the time you get through this thing, that the internal temperature, whatever it is already calculated. I'm just
Well,
doing it.
it is calculated, but so it's still Kelvin, right? So based on the unit, you'll have to call it get temp Celsius or get temp. So it's still in Kelvin. So in that function, if I pass in an N, then I want to look there. So you're gonna create a string that says 20 Fahrenheit. But if it's in Kelvin, you need to convert that. Right? Kelvin to 20.
Can I just write?
Okay. So it's an if statement. Kind of like this, right? This was setting, sorry, and this one. So the same concept, just reversed. So then you call the set temp as Fahrenheit, you call get temp as Fahrenheit. They're not the
My internal temperature was Kelvin, so.
So actually, it's not. It's about the default argument. And so what happens is that default arguments can go on the H, but they can't go on the C. They just can't go. They can't go on both places. So that's the only time copy and paste fails. Well, copy and paste fails you a lot, but that's one of them.
I was thinking about that, it's like one actually.
Right. It was like the ninth one you copied out. You know what I mean? At that point, your brain wasn't thinking. It was just.
I don't remember five.
Because I kind of felt along where what would be,
Oh, okay, so that's, you're not, okay, that's this one here. Oh, okay. So. Oh, that's what it is. Okay, so basically you don't need to return 0. You're gonna want to return one of the values. But basically, so something you can do to make this easier. If you go to val one is bigger than or equal to val two, you can return val one. And then basically, if this is false, you're returning val two. So I would get rid of that whole else if, or I guess it's just an else. But so basically, I'm gonna read whatever that else I'm gonna do zero. Okay, cool. And then right outside of this if, so basically this if.
So this is get count. So you also return my one, you also yeah,
It's just trying to return value.
So that's why I lied. So this one, you're not setting it anymore, you do the opposite. So this was all taking outside temperatures and turning them in, right? This is taking your internal temperatures and down. So this one actually is
Okay, so that's okay. Oh, that makes it smaller.
If I was listening.
It has to be less than size.
Okay, so even on the prototype, you define it. Thank you.
That way you know what the function produces.
No message, the hints I'll give you is it will require a string, right? Yeah, and then it's gonna, the two upper doesn't work on strings, right?
No, it works on fair.
Okay, so you're basically gonna need a for statement that's gonna increment its way all the way through the message. It works on characters, individual characters, two upper.
Huh.
If you type in a whole string in there, it won't do it. That's why you need a for loop to make it go through a string.
Yeah, I thought about that. Like, oh, I guess I always have you.
It's supposed to be something.
Well, so here's, I mean, it looks logically fine, I don't know why. You would think it would.
Remember, for you, C is really get tempo Celsius. Right? I'm trying to get you to think that you can use other functions you wrote and other functions to make your life easier.
Another question.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just default.
Especially you
Are you getting into that? It's just returning.
So what happens is pieces of that class relate to different fields in computer science. But they don't necessarily relate to all. I mean, just like you're taking like physics.
Well, the problem is,
Some things you'll do in
you're
computer
still trying,
science, you'll
you're
use physics.
still
and some
only,
things in computer science.
you're returning a single
I don't know.
character at the end of the message, right? You need to be given a whole message. You see what I'm saying? And then if
Right,
you basically, you're missing your for loop. You need your for loop that goes through.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't know
This is
exactly how
not
it
gonna be
goes
string out.
now.
So the problem with
But I know
this
she has
is
to
it's
write
just,
some
it's gonna write once and see out the switch. What you want it to do is put it into a string tree. You're building it into a string tree, and then you return the string tree as a string.
In high school, but that
You
was.
see what I'm saying?
Right.
So basically, this will look similar, but instead of empty, it'll be,
Because it just.
SS, or whatever I need.
Right, not, yeah.
SMT equals.
Strings automatically initialize to the class, so you don't have to do that. Strings do.
It's not like I'm sitting there. And I also. Yes, that makes sense.
Basically, but instead of counting, you're returning the SS action. I'll show you that. So right now, that's good.
She's like, oh, well, you have to.
I would build your for statement that's gonna work on this. We need a for statement where oh wait, you have for, sorry.
Yeah, I'm right here.
And then she teaches based on questions. So, but that's the only thing she's teaching, like, the questions.
I'm pretty sure you know that there's outside
We have questions on everything. And so,
hold on, 'cause no, you're gonna want.
It just doesn't seem to fit the best. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere, and now I feel like I'm just like, I'm not actually like. And I think don't forget it's I'm taking classes from people who said they were like, and it's like, so, I mean, this is like the first class I've had that literally just does all make sense. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just style.
Your
hard.
if statement needs to be outside of the for loop, or that could be easier just to have it the whole for loop and put it in the ether. But all that stuff needs to go above the for loop.
So I'm the test.
Yeah,
I don't.
And that'd be easier.
I'm going in my first test
Have
today,
that,
and I'm
and
like,
then SS.
yeah, I don't. That's why I don't have a question. Class, which are things that other people have questions on, which aren't necessarily things that I have questions on.
That, you take
And then once you get 4 days of.
and then instead of storing the recipe, you can store it in
How I can, right, and you're not gonna keep going over in class because I got to the class, and it's like,
Actually, you're gonna
I
message.
mean, I say some of
You don't want to put
them.
message in every single time you make a message.
Resources
You're out. It's right now, it's gonna do it every single time you make a message, you know what I mean? So right now, so yeah, that's pretty much what you want.
It is a class that a lot of people struggle with that are smart enough. The good thing is that the units change so quickly that the stuff that you don't like.
So basically,
And that's something where like, because we're gonna go on vacation with this class, so that's where those students that have to use
so, right, so you're good, you're doing that exact thing, so, back to your code real quick, so basically, give me your for loop, so I think it's, so make sure. Okay, so outside of that for loop, return,
ways to do it.
there's
So many
message, quotes, so open quotes, message,
Yeah, don't have to ways to do it.
space, yep, and then,
So I can't even look at my language. I want to entirely relearn it.
Right.
And it's like, that's not necessarily.
okay, I don't think you can actually do that, erase that. It's actually gonna be.
Yeah, we can look at some of those. And I'm giving you a lot of
And then,
because you're taking a class before that.
you're gonna want them to put it up here, so.
Our style's a lot different.
Where you initialize your string string.
Some students do really well with it. Some
You
students
need to do SS equals. Initialize it as.
right, her style is not the way that we go. And you should tell her that, because she'll try to agree with
This is gonna add your uppercase message. If the boolean is true.
Errors.
So,
Not a lot.
see where that
It's like
closes?
errors.
Yeah. So if
See
the
how it's not
boolean
declared?
is false,
Declared.
and then
one
the
thing
reason
is,
why you can't do
I think
that.
your students is you don't use CL. So I don't know where
Well,
right here.
Should I need to?
well, I,
You're not gonna see out it, you're gonna store it.
Because I have this outside the corner.
So this one says, some number comes in.
You must not have string strings.
It tells you what.
Yeah, you just need to do.
Not what you
add this.
If the unit's an F, then it's Fahrenheit, right? If it's a C, it's Celsius. So the unit, or the temp is either Fahrenheit, Celsius, or Kelvin. But you only store things that's Kelvin.
so, second,
So this one, right?
Operator. The equals.
Could be.
But the structure's all that same.
It needs to be, double array.
Right. So the nice thing is you wrote this function. So if this temperature is Fahrenheit, you can just call subtemp from Celsius or something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Use. This basically says right here, it says take the temperature, convert to Kelvin from Fahrenheit, right? That's what this is saying. So you can just
For some
say.
reason, I just don't think it here. Some of them they actually
scroll forward. Okay, so you're again.
Now you just take this, right? This function,
Here's like the.
it wouldn't take anything in Fahrenheit, right? And you're just thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna do Fahrenheit, right? And then press intent, we'll be down to this item.
Okay. Okay.
So use the function that has all the functions.
So right above this return,
This should be, yeah, this should
right above that one, go SS,
yeah, maybe, yeah, I don't know.
and it's gonna be just empty, open quotes, empty.
It would be an if, yeah. So then,
Yeah, and then, semicolon, that, of course.
oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then change that to ss.str.
Here. This one. They're supposed to all line up. Makes sense. They're all.
What I've done with all this,
It's.
all work.
Yeah, so just do that outside, yeah, put both of those right above the statement.
The one thing that temperature.h, you're supposed to put the header cards.
That was actually good, but you got it.
Your name.
And then it will initialize that if the boolean is
Bunch of
false.
opening header cards here. You don't remember header cards?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Why did it return? This is true.
Well, it looks like mine, you was just as K, that should be Kelvin.
Added to that. It's false.
These all match, yeah, this should just be Celsius. So you're right there.
But I have this.
Oh, set temp now. As from Celsius, get temp as. Yeah. Oh yeah, because get temp as Fahrenheit. Let's see. Yeah. You don't have Celsius, so you have a function. You have Celsius. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, probably deserves it.
So that's gonna be empty, that should be message being passed in.
Yeah, all members have access to all of the members.
You're still gonna be missing there a part of it.
Congratulations.
That should fix the first, like,
Okay.
I fixed the first one.
Yeah,
So
one
yours
is.
Whoa, okay.
So they stand in.
So when your boolean turns into true, it stops working.
Here it says Kelvin was not declared. Why should it be underscore or maybe in that function? I'm going that way. Should be 10, right? Because in this function we use like 10 as our return.
Yeah.
The other one's just an
That's
action function to call, so it's trying to call a function. Trying to call get temp as Fahrenheit.
Oh. And it's this
It's
one.
not working. So.
Oh, you're the one who told me to change it.
Is there like a?
I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, we can pass in an but none of it. That function.
So you need to make sure that these are.
Functions, so they all know about all that. So you don't have to pass it in.
Oh.
They already know about your.
Man, is it really doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically you need to add one other one of this, just add a cast care. No, I would do it to this. You're gonna wrap this, you're set a cast care around this whole thing.
What a great feeling. You've been working on it for an hour and now you get to see how well you did.
Oh,
So
great.
it's starting to walk away.
What happened?
So default constructor works. Set temp from Celsius or from Kelvin, get temp at Celsius works. So that's what it is. First time you fail, either you're set temp from Celsius or you get temp at Fahrenheit. You look at get temp at
Very
Fahrenheit.
last one is the one
The
I.
formula has a C.
So here's the deal, they basically,
Fahrenheit.
You said Kelvin, but I said.
It's actually really easy. So what I would do, I would put space between this and your
Okay,
if.
so how do I get my temperature of Celsius?
Do another if statement.
Do I pass?
And basically you're testing if the string is null,
Because
so.
this function
Yep, that's
gives you
it.
that Celsius, right? So
Is
instead of saying
equivalent.
Kelvin, you need to say get.
Stick it in there.
And the only thing you wanna have.
That's the beauty of classes are all friends. They'll get something, not right? You don't want to call the same thing. You want to call Celsius.
Is to return
Right?
SS store,
Like, how do you get Celsius in your program? You call get temperature.
store, string after. Yep, and then return SS as a string.
So that works. Right, you can see your two strings now. So yours says 28.15, which is correct. But the answer has a space and Kelvin, a space and Kelvin. It's just supposed to be upper case Kelvin.
Unless the rest of the stuff is something else.
You can do that. You can do it all. You've done it all.
Get rid of that line.
And by reference, that just means that you didn't write a constructor. Well, I wrote it in 8, so apparently you didn't write it. It could just be a time. Like these, right? These constructors.
Oh. You have to copy those over to.
Yeah. They're pretty easy though. Constructors are quick.
Do they even have to? The class and everything needs to be in.
Not the class, just all the functions. So constructors are functions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was
They're
mine.
special functions, but they are functions, so they can be copied. So 3 more. Good for you.
I really.
That's okay. Throw more data types and declaration of. There or something. We should be able to do it.
Just flip it. No, the max does it, but this, that's what I was trying to learn.
Come on, was that all?
I tried.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, there we go. Double here. We both types. Oh.
It was long years.
Right? Yeah.
And I'll find one.
It's kind of cool though, right? You get like electricity and all that kind of stuff.
I can say I learned all the fancy symbols and stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's basically like all I see on
thing.
That's basically what I take it as. It's like, your computer kind of can do, but now you get to say you took all of the math classes and things. That's why we really like can't go in here and electrical engineering. So you have to pick the computer, and
This one is because you make it page file. So the debar only exists in the declaration prototype and everything. It's a very weird.
If you defined it in the H, when it gets brought over, when you.
I don't think you have much more. You're supposed to say care, but I think it's supposed to be here.
I have a window there, but I don't know what it is. It's probably not weird, but I just don't know what it means.
Extra tokens?
Huh?
I want extra tokens.
I guess that too, but I don't know what this means at all.
That one, so. The extra tokens is from here. Okay, so that thing is what you're doing.
Okay.
And we had an error because these are arguments. And they're definitions. So we're going to definitions, so we're going to age for the next one.
Gotcha. That's all I need.
Now you get your moment of truth. What do we got now?
And everything is wrong.
Okay. Which is simple because it's just return count.
Just.
Yeah, this is about.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, so then it's not, it's the constructor, right? Because it's also called. So this test that you failed, right? The only way I can test it is to get something back out, right? Remember, a lot of your functions put things in, so it also runs the constructor with 5x. So when it calls the constructor and it puts 5 here, and it puts f here, right? It's saying it's not right. And that's because the very first thing you do, right? I give you some temperature I want it to be, and then you just say, no, instead I'm gonna make that temperature be whatever the current Kelvin is. So I'm saying, set it to 10 Fahrenheit, and you say, actually, it's already 2 Kelvin, so we're gonna make it 2 Kelvin. Right? Because you're overriding the input. So that doesn't seem like it, does it? That's a lot farther, right?
Okay.
And your 2 strings just, and these look like they need the decimal place.
Yeah, I made the set.
Yeah, which I think you did last time.
I did, and I looked so.
So you should do it, yeah. And you can do it.
Yeah.
And I might do it. Well, that's good. Especially for private work. That'd be an only.
Probably.
Well, that's because you're supposed to return something and you get to return, so I'm guessing the 2 strings maybe not return.
Yes.
Return OF dot str correct, right? You did all the work, but bring it out of the function.
Make a new string, set it to the string. Or you just get things out. Or yanks or.
Maybe. Or do you do that math? We didn't do that math, make sure. Okay, show class example. So you need this one, that is short. But you'll do it not on CI, right? You'll do it on the stream.
Yeah.
See there?
What's the scenario you need a semicolon after a filter?
Only for class declarations. So like, actually, there's 2 places. Class declarations, because class whatever, open curly, closing curly, semicolon. The only place you'll do it is like initialization list, where you can set values in an array on creation.
Oh.
Otherwise, don't have a curly semicolon.
It would be for.
So it'll still compile, but it's not.
Like constructor doesn't need it. what it did specifically?
Yeah, it just should be temperature cold water.
Oh, I thought power line did in school.
I think so. Sorry, I don't know what these are. Sorry. You didn't say it was part of the class.
Not really. So, is this supposed to?
Yeah. If you're gonna use set precision, then there's includes for it. So my recommendation is instead of doing that, you just say SS and dot precision number function.
Oh.
And that's just easier. Because it's really only a one-time thing. You set it and it'll be that for everything.
So then I can get rid of it, or, you know,
You get rid of all of them.
this one's still.
Not that set.
I also don't like my.
Oh,
Rolling on the else. I added.
They were working.
Spell it
Well,
out.
does the else need any curlies?
Yeah. Yeah, if you have crows on one, you should have crows on all.
Celsius, last time it was 270.
It's going to compile, but it's outline. Even better. So now you're, okay. Remember, get temp as Fahrenheit, so look at that function, right? It doesn't change Kelvin, right? It just returns the temperature, right? So basically, this here is basically like you saying 25, right? Which, that'll compile, but it doesn't mean anything, right? Well, where do we want the 25 to exist? Well, we want it on our output, right? So we want it to exist here, right? This is where we want it to be. We want this to be 25, right? If I want that to be the 25, then what am I going to put there? It's 25 billion now, leave for one.
Okay.
Oh, I got you.
So just
Sometimes like
take
that.
that included.
So,
And can this stay the same?
Yeah, that's fine. Because that one you're not.
You don't need to open the file every time, so basically,
My third constructor is not working
Okay.
because I understand that test 12 and 13 are passing because it just sets it to Kelvin anyway at the end of the constructor. But I'm
So
wondering.
these ones are supposed to convert, right? So it's Fahrenheit,
Yeah.
right? It's telling you the temperature is Fahrenheit,
Okay.
but so it can't be Kelvin. You can't store it into Kelvin.
No.
You have to convert it from Fahrenheit to Kelvin,
Okay.
which you wrote a function to do that.
Yeah. So I would just put the function there.
Yeah, just say set temp,
so.
set from, yeah, from. Oh, great, now I'm gonna spell Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit, I think that's right. Right?
Yeah.
And then you'll just pass in.
And then it equals the temp.
Oh yeah, you just, no, don't
you
pass
pass in
it in.
temp.
Because that's, right, that function will take it.
And then convert it to Kelvin.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Make your life, make your life easier.
So this is not in chronological order. So this cannot work without these other functions working.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, they're all connected. They're all connected.
Yeah, I would do. I don't think it really matters too much, but I would do this.
So that's it's called an initialization section of characters. And so that actually runs before the curly braces. And it's just simple like extra syntax to say that you can set all of your member variables before you It doesn't matter at this point when we get to inheritance. Inheritance is the idea of basically one object is made up of another object. So like this inherits from that, which inherits from that, so it's another that. Yeah, exactly. And so when that happens, using initialization, which you actually need to call, when you build this object, you actually need to call the constructor of this object. The only way you can do that. Because if you by the time you run the body, the curly braces, the object already goes through it. So you need to call the constructor before that gets created and so it's like a timing
After algorithms 3. Yeah, that's kind of where, after algorithms 3, that's where like computer science comes in. And then you apply to class.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to do.